Welcome to another episode of Designing the Future Textiles and Transformation Talks, Alexa Inquires, powered by Performance Days. Today, I'm so excited to speak to Dr. Katy Stevens, whom I know since many years from the She is Outdoors Award jury. Katy is a prominent figure in the textile and outdoor industry, known for her expertise in sustainability and circular business models, and she currently holds the position of Head of CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability at the European Outdoor Group, EOG. At EOG, Katy leads efforts to help outdoor brands reduce their environmental impact, particularly through collaborative projects aimed at decarbonizing supply chains. One notable initiative is the Supply Chain Decarbonisation Project, SCDP, which encourages brands to work together to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve energy efficiency in shared production facilities. Let's dive into the world of the European Outdoor Group. And a very warm welcome, dear Katy.
Thank you, Alexa. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And welcome to everybody to the podcast also.
Yeah, so good you're here. And before I start the questions, I would like to ask you about EOG, because I think many, especially consumers, do not really know about it. Katy, could you briefly introduce the EOG to our audience? What does the EOG stand for? Who are its members and what is its primary goal?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's a pleasure to introduce kind of the association. So the EOG stands for the European Outdoor Group, and we are an industry association for brands, retailers, and any organisation involved in the European outdoor industry. Our membership is made up of brands, retailers, and supply chain partners. And they don't have to be based in Europe, but they have to be doing business within Europe. So we also have a lot of members from the US and from Asia also. We're an industry association, so you may or may not be aware there's a whole world of industry associations out there, something that I didn't really know about until I joined the EOG. But what we basically are is we're a collection of people. So we're an organisation. We were created by the industry around 25 years ago. And we were created by the industry for the industry. So 25 years ago, many organisations recognised that there was a need to come together to discuss bigger industry issues. So outside of the 9 to 5, the day-to-day business, there were bigger things happening that needed to be discussed on an industry level. So the EOG was created kind of as a platform for pre-competitive collaboration. So we exist to bring the industry together on everything that is kind of away from the general kind of 9 to 5 issues. We're still driven by the industry. So we have a board made up of industry representatives. So it's usually management or C-suite within some of our members. And they kind of bring the issues to the table and kind of forge the way roughly for what the EOG does. Sustainability is very much ingrained in our vision and mission. So our vision, so what we are as an association is, we want to be able to do global profitable business in a way that gives back more than we take from people and nature. So we actually have sustainability as a very core of what we do. We do a lot of work for the industry. We do a lot of work actually around market data, because a lot of market data is kind of sports industry in general. And outdoor is a very specific segment of that. So we have a lot of projects where we're kind of collecting data from the industry and then creating reports. But a lot of what we do is around sustainability. We recognise that our industry, everyone is working in the same supply chains, if not the same facilities, and everyone is facing the same, industry challenges. Everyone has issues with policy and with materials and with other things. So within the sustainability area, there's really a lot of opportunity for collaboration to come together and discuss these issues. So that's who we are.
That's a fantastic start for my first question, because it's the importance of collaboration, actually. So, Katy, your leadership at the European Outdoor Group has propelled collaborative projects and bring competing brands together. What strategies do you use to cultivate the spirit of cooperation, and how do these partnerships accelerate progress towards industry-wide sustainability?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think a lot of what we do, you're absolutely right, is about bringing people together. And I think one of the first things that you need to do to have these collaborative projects is provide that space and place for the industry to come together. I mean, we do this at trade fairs such as performance days or ISPO or outdoor show. And I really think the first step is, just being together and having some conversations. A lot of what we do to kind of foster that collaboration is built on trust. Um, how do we build that trust? Well, it all comes down really to open communication, to being very clear about and very honest and open about, what we do, who we are, why we're here. I think specifically within the outdoor industry, there's a lot of people who are very engaged in outdoor activities. There's a very close connection to sport. So kind of collaboration is almost kind of key because, they have very shared visions and they're very similar people often, which really helps kind of build that collaboration. I think another thing that we kind of to help build that trust, we're very open about the challenges. It's quite remarkable sometimes. You'll speak to someone about a project or an initiative and it all sounds amazing. And as soon as you start to scratch away, you realize that there's, a lot of cracks in what they're doing. And I think at the EOG, we're very honest and open about this. I think, challenges are part of the situation. And if we just ignore them, we're not going to really move anywhere. We're also about, sharing successes of our members. I think if we can put our members on a pedestal and say this organisation is doing something great, that obviously really helps them to feel a part of a community and a part of something much bigger. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the strategy. We also, when it comes specifically to the projects, obviously some of our projects are very long-term projects. So our supply chain decarbonisation project that you talked about earlier, that's been running for 3 years now, because this is, necessary work that needs to be done. And I think when you have these really long-term projects, to keep that collaboration going and, to stop people getting bored and kind of drifting off halfway through, it kind of needs a different approach to the actual project management and the way that things are managed. And what we try and do is, again, it comes to all around, it all comes back to kind of communication, being very clear about roles and responsibilities, being very inclusive in the work that we do. So making sure that, we're talking to suppliers and everyone kind of in the bigger ecosystem, their voices and opinions are heard. You also need to be consistent and reliable. I think as soon as this kind of level of consistency drops, people start to wander off and get distracted with other things. So you have to, just keep going. Resilience is also something that we really have to possess within ourselves. We're also very open to, and we actually encourage kind of feedback. We want to hear from our members, and we want to hear, whether it's on a kind of general EOG level or a very specific project level, we want to hear from our members. We want to know, is it working? Is it not working for them? What are their challenges? How can we support them? What more can we do? And then I think a large part of what we do is we have to kind of manage confidentiality within all the projects that we do. Obviously, it sounds like this lovely family that we're working with, and in many cases it is. But at the end of the day, these organisations are competitors within the market. So we do have to be very conscious of how we manage their confidential information and how we kind of, whether that's on a project level or a general level. Yeah, and I think what we see from this collaboration is we see the industry moving really quickly. I think, collaboration, on the one hand, it's more cost effective. If they're pooling their resources, they can move much more quickly and accelerate the work that they do. It really helps because everyone is pulling in the same direction. If we want to suggest the development of a tool or the upgrade of or something, or it really helps if we've got more people saying the same thing. instead of everyone pulling in slightly different directions. So, it really helps to accelerate the progress. I think also the members really benefit from this kind of peer-to-peer support system. Very often sustainability can be quite a lonely area, and just having validation of the work that they're doing and kind of the thought processes that they're having, I think that really helps to accelerate the work that we do as well. So I think collaboration is the way forward, really. I think some of these challenges are so big, and sustainability is becoming very kind of multidisciplinary, that we have to work together and we have to figure out how we communicate within these big projects.
Fantastic, Katy. And I think it's so important that you build the trust within your members for the collaboration, and I think it's paramount, and good to hear that you have actually could build that trust for the proper communication and then go forward with the collaboration. And then talking about the next very important question of the vision for sustainability, because your supply chain, the EOG supply chain decarbonization project, has been so pivotal in reducing carbon footprints across the industries. So can you share the tangible impacts of this initiative so far and outline the most significant hurdles brands face in achieving these ambitious targets?
Sure. Before I begin on the kind of impacts and hurdles, I'll start with a little overview of what the project is. So the supply chain decarbonisation project is something that I mentioned earlier that we've been working on for around 3 years now. And the idea for the project came because we kind of suspected that people might be sharing suppliers. I think within the outdoor industry, garments are very technical, and as are the materials. And when it comes to suppliers, there's a limited, there's only so many facilities that can do downfilling or the very technical stitching. So we kind of suspected that there was a lot of facility sharing happening. We really wanted to try and kind of build on this premise and see how we could really impact these shared suppliers, which are the kind of hotspots within the industry, within the supply base. So what we did, we started with a small pilot group. I think we started with 10 brands. At the very beginning, when we started this project, there was no kind of 101 or how to decarbonize supply chains. So we were really starting from nothing. And we wanted to keep the pilot group quite small while we figured out the methodology, as well as obviously trying to impact the greenhouse gas emissions. And what we did with those 10 suppliers, with those 10 brands, we asked them to share with us their top 15 suppliers. We knew from some research that we'd done that a large proportion of brands' greenhouse gas emissions are located in a very small part of their supply chain. So we didn't want to start, with all suppliers. We wanted to kind of narrow that down a little bit. So we asked 10 brands for their top 15 suppliers, and then we mapped them against each other. So we literally went through all the addresses, all the facility names, just to see where those shared suppliers were. From 10 brands, 15 suppliers, we had 44 shared suppliers. Some of them were shared by every single brand in the group, and most of them were shared by 3 or 4 of the brands. So we mapped supply chains, we figured out where they shared suppliers, and then we started a program of assessment, capacity building, and mitigation action plans with those shared suppliers. The assessments were done on-site and off-site with organisations locally to the suppliers, and all training and capacity building was delivered in local language to make sure that it was accessible for these suppliers. So that's what we've been doing, really. And then the kind of output of that process is a carbon toolkit, and it lists literally every mitigation action that can be carried out within each supplier to kind of reach the necessary targets. Since we did the pilot group, we've also started one more apparel cohort. We also have a footwear, and we've just started a hard goods cohort. So we're really starting. So now that we have the process and we know that it works, we're really starting to kind of scale that across the industry and in the different kind of sectors. With regards to tangible impacts, I mean, quantitatively, we know now that from the small batch of suppliers that we worked with for the pilot group, we have the potential to reduce 500 million kilograms of CO2e. So that's
Wow,
500,000 tons. So it's really a significant, reduction.
fantastic.
We've also learned from this process that, so another kind of tangible output is we now know that 70% of the potential reduction is related to the phase out of coal. So we really have a very clear direction of what the industry actually needs to do. We also have a roadmap. So now we know for that group, for a group, what they need to do. And the brands involved in that group also know what their role in that is. So we have this very clear roadmap of what needs to happen next. It's also prepared the supply base for the future. So it's starting these conversations with the suppliers about what they need to do and what data they need to start collecting, and just to start getting the suppliers on board. So having these kind of preliminary conversations. The other thing we've done is we've developed a methodology. So earlier I said when we started this work, we didn't really know what to do, and we didn't know who the stakeholders were or who we wanted to work with. But now we have a methodology, and we've also shared that as a case. We wrote that up as a case study, which is publicly available, because what we want to do is enable anyone else who needs to start this work just to share what we did, what we learned, where the challenges were, so that other people don't need to repeat the mistakes that we've made. So we have this case study available on our website. We've also been disseminating that with other organisations. So we've had conversations with the cycling industry and with the UK fashion industry and with other associations who also are trying to do this collaborative approach. So we've been very openly sharing our methodology with them. Obviously, this kind of work does not happen without challenges. There are, of course, hurdles along the way, and things that we've had to overcome. I think the first and probably the challenge that everyone engaging in this work will talk about is cost. I cannot tell you how many times during our work, how many times we came up with, how are we going to pay for this? It's obviously hugely cost intensive to do the work that needs to be done. There are also geographical challenges. So, trying to do this kind of work in Taiwan is quite different than trying to do it in China. So local politics and local policies can really impact the work that needs to be done. I think we also need a little bit more in terms of innovation to get where we need to go. This is another challenge. So whether that's machinery or technologies or whatever that may be. And obviously innovation takes time. So that kind of the need, I think the group can be very aware of what's needed, but to actually develop that solution, it takes some time. And I think what's kind of an added challenge for our industry is the outdoor industry is not just making apparel. We also have footwear and hard goods. Footwear in many ways can be quite similar to apparel in terms of materials, but as soon as we start talking about hard goods, we're talking about metals, we're talking about plastics, we're talking about wood. So the supply chains become very different. And, if we're thinking about metal supply chains, the outdoor industry is a tiny, tiny customer to the metal industry. So we don't have the same level of kind of, we can't put the same amount of pressure on that we can put on that we can use with the apparel industry.
There's many targets to achieve still, but I love the carbon footprint toolkit that you're supplying, and I think that's a very good approach for people who know facing the next challenges of our industry going forward and reducing the carbon footprint and having a toolkit and knowing how to follow. And with your pilot group, I think you really you get the experience, you get the references, and then you can tell how to go forward in the different directions in the different industries.
I think I will say the pilot group were fantastic. They were so open with each other. They were so willing to contribute that they kind of, so I mean,
Wow.
at the beginning we were talking about trust, and the pilot group, they trusted each other so quickly that it just made the project a pleasure, because they were so happy to just work together and put all those
Yeah.
confidentiality aside.
I mean,
So
in the end of the day, it's all about trust because leading to the next question, the role of the data, because your EOG sustainability data exchange, the ESDX has really this has streamlined data and the transparency and compliance for brands. So it's really critical with the data. So how is the data transparency driving in meaningful sustainable change across the textile industry, and what are the key benefits the brand can expect from it?
do you mean the SDEX project in particular, or just transparent data in general?
Data in general in this case.
Yeah, I mean, there's a phrase that's kind of thrown around the industry a lot, and everybody says you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think there's so much truth in this. This is why everybody comes back to that phrase. Um, Data is becoming increasingly important, because you know we need to make baselines, and we need to measure improvements, measure progress specific to interventions or projects or whatever that is. How successful was that thing that we did last year, or is it more successful than the thing that we did the year before? So purely from a sustainability, from a brand or retail level sustainability perspective, we need data now more than ever to measure progress and see how meaningful the work that we do is. But there are other reasons that data is becoming important in the industry, and probably one of the main other reasons is around compliance and reporting. So the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, was implemented in the last years, and this has really been a game changer for the industry. So
Mm-hmm.
big organisations are now required to report on their sustainability work, and there's a huge amount of information that goes into this directive, into the reporting of this directive. So data is everything at the moment. And
Mm.
what we are seeing at the EOG as well is that there's kind of a trickle down effect. So some of the new policies only apply to big organisations, but when smaller SMEs are supplying those organisations, the kind of requirements trickle down to the smaller organisations, because they have to supply the data to the bigger organisations so that the bigger organisations can do their reporting. So even if you're an SME, this data and information is quite critical at the moment. But it's not just compliance and reporting, also consumers. I think consumers are becoming more interested and starting to ask a lot more questions about where things are made, how things are made, what things are made from. So even from a consumer perspective, data is more relevant than ever.
Yeah.
And I think it also means it leads to, if brands and retailers can supply data, it gives them more accountability. It gives more trust, because consumers and regulators and whoever else can trust them when they have the information. So yeah, I think data's where it's at. And I think what else I've noticed as well, thinking about kind of how sustainability is embedded in organizations. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there were no sustainability data managers in organizations. And increasingly, we see this new job creation of sustainability data manager. So I think at an organizational level as well, there's an awareness that this is becoming much more important, and it's created this new role that didn't exist a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that probably leads to this question I still have within the data, because in the world that is swamped with the data, particularly with the sustainability metrics, how would you go forward with it? How do you um, how can the brands filter through the overload to find clarity? What role does the EOG play guiding its members to focus on the actionable insights that lead to impactful decisions?
Um, I think what the EOG can do, and this is something that we mentioned at the very beginning, is, bringing people together and helping them to figure out what data points are important and what data points are just noise. But also helping them to understand how to implement tangible actions from that data. So, what does this data tell us? And how can we use this to figure out how to make our business better?
Okay.
Um,
So I think it's so important and facing all these challenges. So I would like to go directly now in the eco design products because we are running short a little bit. I love your answers, but we have to go a little bit further. So with the EU's eco design for sustainable products regulation that are set to reshape the industry standards. So how is the EOG equipping its members to not just comply but leverage the changes as springboards for innovation?
yeah, good question. I think the ESPR, so the Eco Design Regulation, is one of the first of its kind, really, that's really looking at the design aspects and what that means at a product level. I think what we're doing to support our members through this is firstly helping them to understand the regulation. I think we often see that many of these regulations, people aren't given the time to actually digest what that means and what it
Mm.
means and how to implement it at a business level. So the first thing we're doing is around kind of knowledge dissemination and education and around business readiness. So really helping them to break down the regulation and figure out what that means at a business level. We're also supporting, there's a lot of projects happening at the moment around durability and looking at what durability means for the outdoor industry. So we've been supporting these projects to kind of help the industry to understand parts of this regulation better. We've also been helping, obviously a big part of the ESPR is around the digital product passport. So we've been helping our members to kind of navigate their way through the maze of technologies and platforms that claim to be the next platform for the digital product passport. One thing I find really amusing is weekly I get an email from someone who has a platform claiming to be the platform for the DPP, which always kind of makes me laugh because up until now that there's still a little bit of clarity missing from the European Commission on the specifications for the DPP. So it always makes me smile because I think, okay, you're claiming to be the platform for a regulation that's not even fully defined yet. So we're kind of helping with this technological support and this assessment and evaluation of technology and platforms. We've also developed, as you mentioned earlier, our SDEX project, the Sustainability Data Exchange, which is a standardized format for exchanging product level sustainability data. So that going through the process of developing the SDEX and figuring out what the important data points are has really helped the industry to understand where to get their data from internally, what to do with that data and how to communicate it up and down the supply chain. So these are the kind of things that we're doing really is, just helping our members to navigate, educate, and where we need some further resources to try and provide a catalyst to get those things going.
Understood. Oh, fantastic. So, looking forward, I think it's so important that we unify also these platforms because it's again like it's like on certifications. It's like it's really difficult to go on different platforms and to get telling you are the platform because I mean we have to work together here and unify the context for
Mm,
the industry. If not, it's just confusing for everyone
yeah.
and
I
leading
mean,
to complete confusion.
I've seen some really great, I think many of the platform developers, though, are kind of waking up to this reality.
Mm.
And I've heard in the last weeks a few of the platforms who are saying, we know there might not be one platform to rule them all. So they're focusing a lot on kind of interconnectivity. So how the platforms connect with each other, which I think is a really great thing.
Should
It's not all
do.
of the platforms, but some of them are really kind of trying to embrace that kind of collaboration on a platform level, which is great.
Very good. So that leads directly to the consumer engagement question that I have to you, because as the industry evolves towards the sustainability, educating and engaging consumers as well, because they are the ones in the end, as they are crucial, and it becomes vital. So with consumers becoming increasingly attuned to sustainability, how can the EOG support the brands to inspire shifts in purchasing behavior and promote responsible choices without overwhelming their
Right.
audience?
Yeah. Um, I think this is a really interesting question. And just to start with a little kind of boundary, the EOG is a business to business platform. So most things to do with consumers we don't really engage with. That's kind of outside the scope
Mm.
of what we do. However, um, I think what we can support with is making sure the industry has a very aligned message. So it's all about communications, really, and kind of best practice around communications. I think kind of one train of thought of this on kind of the consumer side is you can't influence consumer behavior. You should be doing the right thing anyway, and kind of to take them out of the equation. So that's kind of within the sustainability circles. There's a big camp of people who just say, leave consumers out of this. They're not part of this discussion, actually. But I think this is not necessarily so within the outdoor industry, because there's a lot of conversation around things like PFAS and microfibers, which are actually getting out into the consumer space. So what we would recommend and what we really try and help our members with is, align messaging. A really good example of this is there's a project from Equip called Material Facts. And what they've developed is a kind of consumer facing information label. And it's very similar to the labeling that you find on food. So, on every food packaging has a label
Mhm.
with sugar and fat and protein and all of the attributes. So, what Equip have done is they've developed a methodology to collect and calculate this data. It's a very small amount of data. So, it's percentage recycled material, it's presence of PFAS, it's where the garment's made. So it's not too overwhelming for the consumer, but they've also developed kind of a way of presenting this. And what they've done is they've kind of gifted this to the industry, because again, if everybody is using the same method, it makes it much easier for consumers to understand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of work going on around this, and I think the key is really aligned messaging.
Oh, thank you, Katie, for that answer. That's really good. I mean, even if you're not engaging directly with the consumer, but it's so important that you always keep them in mind and to actually put on the glasses of the consumer. So we're getting closer to the next very important question, which is about the future of the EOG. So looking ahead as the textile and outdoor industry navigates constant change, what is EOG's long-term vision for supporting its members in key areas such as sustainability, digital evolution, and changing consumer expectations?
Um, I think so. The EOG, we have kind of a vision of where we see the industry, and a big part
Mm.
of that is around climate. So we're really doubling down on our climate work. I think there are other issues. Obviously, sustainability is kind of a spectrum of different issues. There's water, there's waste, there's materials, there's social sustainability. There's many, many things to think about. But certainly in the short term, climate is one of our bigger focuses. And for the next years, we're really also focusing on compliance and implementation. I believe that in one of your previous episodes, you spoke to a lady about the kind of compliance landscape at the moment.
Yeah.
So hopefully everybody has an awareness that this is huge. Um, so what we're really trying to do is equip our members with tools and knowledge, and to enable them to, really implement what is within the new policies.
Mm.
So to really try
Can
and kind of hold their hand through the process.
Can you give us a glimpse into upcoming initiatives from the EOG?
Yeah, absolutely. So Um, there will be a lot of resources and initiatives on the compliance side. So whether that's gap analysis or 101 guides for compliance or many things kind of in that area. But we're also looking at communications as well, quite in depth. So in 2025, we'll have some outputs on how the industry can communicate with consumers, kind of building on the green claims and empowering consumers regulations, but also looking at kind of national initiatives like I think it's the Green Communications Code in the UK. So one of our outputs will be kind of guidance on communications. So yeah, that's kind of what we're focusing on for now.
Dear Katy, thank you so much for our conversation. It was truly a pleasure. And at the end of every episode, I love leaving listeners with a small call to action. So, after all, the smallest changes in our daily lives can lead to significant impact when they add up over time. So, what would your actionable advice be? A simple step we can all start practicing today to inspire positive change. So, I'm
Okay.
looking forward to hearing your thoughts.
Well, I think this is actually a really nice question, and my suggestion might be a bit of a curveball. It's not something that requires much effort or piling more on the already stacked plates of the sustainability professionals or industry professionals in general, actually. And my kind of recommendation really focuses on, self-care. And what I would recommend is quite simple, and to make sure that you are getting outside, spending some time in nature. If it's every week, even better. If it's only once a month, also great. But to really step away from the screens, the emails, these environments where we are constantly bombarded with information and endless noise. And I think I think with the things that have happened in the last week, so the US election and the political situation in Germany and many things, I've really noticed that many people within the industry are really overwhelmed and are taking that feeling quite strongly within them. So my recommendation is just to shut the laptop, get outside. It doesn't have to be extreme. I'm not saying that everyone should be climbing mountains and swimming across lakes, but just simply breathe in some fresh air, walk through a forest. I think nature has a really incredible ability to ground us and to remind us of what we're fighting for. I think everyone's pretty exhausted at the moment, and just this stepping away can really rekindle the energy and the passion that we need to face these challenges. And I think, it's hard to notice, it's hard to appreciate the need for more care on biodiversity if we're not even noticing it. I think if you're outside regularly, you notice that you can't hear the birds, the bees anymore, and you notice that you can't hear the insects. And I think sometimes the most revolutionary act is just to reconnect with the world that we're striving to protect.
Absolutely, and I can only agree. I think being outside is one of the most important things in our lives to really resource,
Mm.
regenerate, and have the feeling who we are actually in the end of the day. I mean,
Yeah.
we outside is important, and I was very blessed having had a pet, so a dog, to go outside at least 2-3 times a day and for many years. So I it's just it's a process that
Mm.
helps to bring you outside on top if you don't have the chance to go outside in your daily life, because
Exactly.
sitting at the computer is very fast a habit that you don't leave anymore, and you don't realize in the end of the day how little you've been outside, because
Yeah.
now I realize after my pet is gone that I have to force myself to go outside. I forget about it
Yeah.
actually, so I really count in those moments now, and it's fantastic
Yeah.
to
And I think when you're
get that
busy,
feeling. Mm.
sorry, Alexa, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
there.
no, no. No, 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 no.
I think when you're busy and you're prioritizing, everyone prioritizes work over the social side of their lives.
Me
And I think
too.
we need to kind of, sometimes shut the laptop, switch off the noise, and just enjoy what's around
Yeah.
us.
Let's go. That's a perfect sentence. Let's shut the laptops. Thank you, Katy. Let's go outside and live the life forward and in nature. Thank you so much for that conversation. I'm looking forward to talk to you soon. Big hug. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Designing the Future Textiles and Transformation Talks. It's been an honor to host Dr. Katy Stevens from the European Outdoor Group. Her leadership and insights remind us that both collaboration and visionary thinking can truly reshape industries and ultimately the future of our planet. Today's conversation was nothing short of inspiring. Katy unveiled the transformative power of uniting competitors to tackle shared challenges in collaboration, with a supply chain decarbonization project standing as a testament to what's possible when we work together. To enable real reductions in carbon emissions across the entire industry, the EOG supports their members by providing a roadmap and helpful materials like, for example, their carbon toolkit. She also shone a spotlight on the critical importance of data transparency through initiatives like the Sustainability Data Exchange. And Katy explained how clear, actionable insights can turn the overwhelming complexity of sustainability metrics into meaningful change. And perhaps most compellingly, she shared how EOG is equipping its members not only meet the demands of the EU's eco-design for sustainable products regulation, but to use these changes as a launchpad for innovation and leadership. Finally, her focus on engaging and educating consumers revealed a pathway to fostering not just responsible purchasing decisions, but a cultural shift towards sustainability. Let's take this inspiration and turn it into action. What can you do today to foster collaboration, champion transparency, or guide your own organization toward a more sustainable future? Join the conversation on social media and share your thoughts. Explore more about the European Outdoor Group's groundbreaking initiatives on their website. And if this episode sparked ideas or solutions for you, pass it on to your colleagues and friends. Together we can amplify the impact. The journey doesn't stop here. In our next episode, we'll be diving into the future of transforming challenges into opportunities for creativity and growth. Be sure to turn in for more insights that will help you shape the future of the textile and apparel industries. And Katy, thank you once again for your invaluable wisdom and dedication to driving meaningful change. And to our listeners and audience, thank you for being part of this community of changemakers. Together, let's continue designing a future that's innovative, sustainable, and collaborative. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Performance Days platform, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Until next time, stay inspired, stay proactive, and let's keep transforming our industry step by step.